So if you were not aware, the Wii Shop Channel is basically going down on March the 26th. It actually goes down on January 31st, 2019, but past March the 26th you'll no longer be able to add funds to your account. Now, I recently made a video about the 10 best WiiWare exclusives, but there's obviously loads more games on the WiiWare, some that are great exclusives, and some that were exclusive but came to other platforms. So I'm just going to take some time to look at a bunch of other great WiiWare games. So rather than scripting this video out, I thought I'd take a little bit of a more casual look at basically most of the WiiWare games that I downloaded. Some of these won't be heavy hitters like the ones in the other video, but some of them will probably be better than those ones because they're no longer exclusive. Also, towards the end of the video, I'll mention a few Japanese exclusive WiiWare games that I managed to pick up. Unfortunately, you will need to own a Japanese Wii to pick up these games. But if you have got one, then stay tuned for that. But anyway, let's chat about some of the great WiiWare games that you can download before they're gone. So first off, let's start with some of the Nintendo titles. Now, there are quite a lot of Nintendo games on the WiiWare. Not a lot of their big name franchises, but they did have some cool original games like this one, 530 Echo Shooter. And it's actually developed by Intelligent Systems, the guys who did Fire Emblem and Paper Mario of all things. It's an on-rail shooter where you pick up trash. I haven't actually played this game too much because I only downloaded it recently and I wasn't actually sure what I was doing when I played it. I should probably have read the manual. But yeah, a really weird on-rail shooter by the people who made Fire Emblem. It's a weird oddity on the WiiWare, something that can only exist on the WiiWare, so check it out. Then we have Actionloop Twist. This is a sequel to a DS game, I believe. It's called Actionloop. It's called Actionloop in Europe. It's called something different in America. I can't quite remember what it's called, but I'll put it on screen. Anyway, this is basically a Zuma clone, and a really fun one at that. You twist the Wii remote to aim. But it's basically just a match-free puzzle game, but it's pretty fun. You get to play as your Miis. It's a cool game. I like it. So Nintendo released a bunch of art-style games for the DSiWare and also the WiiWare, and they're basically artsy puzzle games. So you've got Penta Tentacles, Roto Hex, Cubello, Light Tracks, and Orbiant. My favourite one's probably Light Tracks. It's a sort of racing game, but you have to follow specific paths. And then I also enjoyed Penta Tentacles. I know some people also really like Orbiant. I couldn't really get into it, but have a look at these games if you've. I think they're fairly cheap. And Bonsai Barber kind of shows the weirdness that Nintendo and other companies are going with the WiiWare. You use the Wii remote to cut the hair off of vegetables. And it's actually kind of fun. Like, it's probably more of a casual game, but yeah, it was a good fun 5 minutes when I got to play it. It's Dr. Mario and Germbuster, which in America I think it's called Dr. Mario RX or Dr. Mario Online RX. It was the first Dr. Mario game that had online, and the online was quite fun. That's dead now, so all you really get with this is Dr. Mario. But you also get the other side of the game, which they call Germbuster, which is basically Dr. Mario, but you play with the Wii remote. It's got kind of different rules. You can move some of the pills as they're falling down. But yeah, it's kind of just Dr. Mario, so yeah, if you want a Dr. Mario game on the WiiWare, then check it out. That's basically what you get. Excitebike World Challenge is pretty fun. It plays basically like the original Excitebike, but it's got like the ranking system from the Excite Truck and the Excite Bots games. Hydro Venture, I think in America it's called Fluidity, if I remember correctly. It's sort of like Loco Roco, but you play with water and you get to tilt the stage with the Wii remote. I've only played a little bit of this one, but I know this one got quite high reviews when it came out, and it is pretty fun. It's 1200 Wii points, which is a bit steep for a WiiWare game, but if you've got some money to throw about, then give this one a look. Maboshi, the 3-Shape Arcade. This one's kind of cool in the way that it designs the screen, where you only play on the leftmost arcade machine, but it's got the middle one and the right one, where it's showing demos of other games at the same time. They're really simple. There's only 3 really simple mini games, but you could also transfer these games to the DS, which is a pretty cool concept. My Pokemon Ranch is basically what Pokemon Box was on the GameCube, but you get a little bit more interactivity with your Pokemon. You connect them to the 4th generation of Pokemon games, and then this was the first time they used this Pokemon Rumble style art style. Probably a kind of useless application now, but I think at the time if you put loads of Pokemon in there, you could get rewarded with Pokemon for your DS games. Can't remember which ones they were. Maybe, I think Mew might have been one of them, but I could be remembering wrong. Then there's WarioWare D.I.Y Showcase. Now this game is basically WarioWare D.I.Y, the one that was on the DS, where you could make your own mini-games and upload them online. That functionality is dead now. This one doesn't come highly recommended because it plays the same as the DS one, except it emulates the touchscreen with the Wii controls, which never really feels good, and there's a couple other WiiWare games that do that. But I think this one's got some original mini games made from Nintendo, so there you go. There's a WarioWare game on the WiiWare, and if you want to grab it, you better hurry up. So in the other video I mentioned Castlevania ReBirth. There's also Contra ReBirth and Gradius ReBirth, and these are brand new sequels to those series. They're not remakes like Castlevania The Adventure is supposed to be. Contra ReBirth's pretty cool because you can hold 2 weapons at the same time. And then Gradius ReBirth is just a new Gradius game, and all Gradius games, you know what you're getting into, and they're always really fun. So the WiiWare had tons of new entries into classic arcade games. So Taito released 3 games, Arkanoid Plus, Bobble Plus and Puzzle Bobble Plus. Now I bring these ones up first because they're sort of exclusive, but they're sort of not. So the names of them had me thinking they were brand new games, and that's why I downloaded them, because I didn't want to download any games that were available on PSN and Xbox Live Arcade. So I downloaded these 3 games, started playing Arkanoid Plus and realised it's exactly the same as Arkanoid Live from the Xbox Live Arcade, just with a different name. And that seems to be the case with Bobble and Puzzle Bobble. So there's definitely other ways to play this, probably better ways to play this, because they're in HD on the Xbox Live, and they might be available on PSN, but I'm not sure. But then there are other arcade games which are exclusive to the WiiWare. So there's Bomberman Blast by Hudson. This one's nothing special. It's just a Bomberman game. There's no story mode. You can only play the multiplayer. But what's cool about it is that you can connect up to 4 Wii remotes and 4 GameCube controllers and play 8 player. The Saturn Bomberman had 10 player, and then I think you can play 8 player on the Switch Super Bomberman R. But other than that, there's not many Bomberman games where you can play 8 player, so that's pretty cool. And Namco released Mr. Driller W, which is a kind of lackluster version of Mr. Driller. It doesn't have the Dristone modes or the mission modes that other DS versions of Mr. Driller have. Even the D.I.Y exclusive Mr. Driller game has those. This one just has the standard mode, so there's better versions of Mr. Driller. But some of these companies released actual substantial sequels to arcade games which are exclusive to WiiWare, and these are the ones I do recommend you check out. So there's Space Invaders Get Even, where you play as the Space Invaders and you go around destroying cities. It's kind of bizarre. The weird thing about this game is that half the game's locked behind DLC, so it's only 500 Wii points if you want the base game, but then you have to pay an extra 500 Wii points for more levels. Each pack costs 500 Wii points, so you might end up spending a lot if you want to get the full game, but it's a pretty cool concept that uses the Wii Remote and Nunchuck pretty well. And then Hudson released a bunch of sequels to old arcade games. So you got Adventure Island The Beginning, which is a new version of Adventure Island, which there hasn't been much Adventure Island lately. This one I hear isn't that amazing, but I didn't mind it. I played a little bit of it, it's quite fun. Alien Crush Returns is a really cool sequel to the Crush series of pinball games. So Alien Crush was originally a TurboGrafx game, then there was Devil's Crush on the TurboGrafx, which was called Dragon's Crown, I think, on the Mega Drive, and then they had a sequel, Dragon's Revenge, and then there's a couple other versions. This is basically the same thing as pinball, and this one has a story mode, which is kind of bizarre for a pinball game, but there you go. This one's quite fun, I recommend it. And then there's Star Soldier R, which is a shooter game, but it only focuses on a timed attack mode, so you can only play for about 5 minutes, which may not sound like it's got a lot of depth, but jumping into a 5-minute time attack mode in a shooting game is a lot more fun than you'd imagine. You can get really powerful really early on and just blast stuff, so you know, if you come home for a long day of work and you just want to kill stuff for 5 minutes, then Star Soldier R is really good for that. And then Sunsoft released an exclusive sequel to Blaster Master Overdrive. Now there's a ton of Blaster Master games on other systems like the Game Boy and the PlayStation 1, and now there's also one on the WiiWare, which once this is gone, Blaster Master Overdrive is going to be disappearing from existence. In terms of the game, I've only downloaded it recently, but I know this game got a bit of flack for its art style. But you know, I'm down for a Blaster Master sequel. I love the original, and I loved Blaster Master Zero on the Switch, so I'm definitely going to play more of this one when I get the chance. And I mentioned the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles games in the last video, but Square Enix also did Final Fantasy IV The After Years on the Wii. This game was originally released on Japanese mobile phones, and I'm pretty sure those services are way more dead than the WiiWare is soon to be. But here's the thing with Final Fantasy IV The After Years. So the Wii version is split up into a bunch of different towers. All the versions are, but with the mobile version and the Wii version, you have to buy them all separately. So the base game's about 800 points. I think you get 2 towers. And then if you want to buy the game in its entirety, you have to end up spending like 3,600 Wii points, which is about, I'd say roughly £25. And the game's available on PSP in physical form, probably for so much cheaper, and you get Final Fantasy IV, the original, and an extra added interquel with that. So, and it's also available on the iOS and Steam as a 3D version, like the DS version of Final Fantasy IV. So there's probably better ways to play Final Fantasy IV The After Years, but what is cool about this version is that it's got a similar art style to the original Final Fantasy IV. So you have to weigh up whether you want to spend a lot of money on a probably inferior version, but a more retro version that's more akin to the original game. And a lot of people don't actually like Final Fantasy IV The After Years that much, so it's up to you if you want to buy this one. And Square Enix also released 2 Tales of Bearsworth Manor games. Now I think these games are probably made by the exact same team that did the Crystal Chronicles games, because all the menus and everything seems very similar to those games. These games are kind of like Pikmin, but instead of being out in an open field, you're on a little storybook. There's two versions of these games, kind of like where Pokemon games released too. There's Chaotic Conflicts, which features a lot more fighting than the other version, which is Puzzling Pages. And Puzzling Pages is more of a puzzle version. We have to throw your minions with the right amount of force to get to the different puzzle pieces that they put on the screen. I would say Chaotic Conflicts is a lot more fun because this game was kind of bashed for its controls, because you have to... It's sort of like if you imagine the original Wii Sports, where it was hard to get the golf swing right. That's basically what this game is, but at least with the Chaotic Conflicts version, you don't really have to be precise because you're just kind of throwing them at the enemies. And the AI will kind of do the job for you. With Puzzling Pages, you have to be precise and it can be a bit annoying. Tomena is a Konami game where it's an endless runner where you play as, I think, a Japanese guy trying to get to work or something. It's only like 500 Wii Points and you run into a bunch of different bizarre things along the way. It's quite fun and cheap. I'd definitely check this one out. And then another fun and cheap one and a hugely bizarre one, just like Tomena, but probably 10 times more bizarre if you can believe that. Muscle March, and I think I'll just let the gameplay do the talking here. Ubisoft released a game called Protothea, which is a shoot 'em up that uses the Wii remote and nunchuck in pretty cool ways. Instead of being locked to a small section of the screen, you get to kind of freely move around the whole screen as it scrolls, and then you have to use the Wii remote to point to your enemies to shoot them. It's a pretty good one, and it's exclusive to the WiiWare. And now I'll go over some indie games that aren't from any big developers that you probably would have heard of. And these are some of the best games on the system, to be honest, but some of them have been ported elsewhere, that's why they weren't in the previous video. But first off, we've got LostWinds and LostWinds Winter of the Melodias. So the first LostWinds came out day and date with the WiiWare. It was a launch title, and it was one of the ones I picked up. I picked up this and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles My Life as a King. That was an excellent day because they're both really good games, but LostWinds in particular is an amazing game. It's a puzzle platformer where you use the Wii remote in really cool ways. You use it to control the wind, and you can use it to get your character to different parts of the level, or use it to manipulate the environment and solve puzzles. It's a really fun game. And these games have now been ported to PC, I think on the Steam. But you lose the uniqueness of being able to use the Wii remote and nunchuck with these games. They've probably got better graphics on the PC, but the great thing about these games was their unique controls, so I would definitely recommend picking these up on the Wii if you can. But if not, do give them a look on PC because they're still really good games. And the same can be said about NyxQuest. Very similar to LostWinds, it's a artsy indie puzzle platformer. Doesn't use the Wii remote like LostWinds, but it's still a really good platformer that's also been ported to PC. And MotoHeroz, when this game came out, it got really good reviews. I was looking at Nintendo Life reviews for WiiWare games earlier, and this was the only game they gave a 10 out of 10. And it's sort of like a Trials or Joe Danger sort of game. It's a bit more difficult in those games because I think all the missions seem to be having you race someone, and it can be kind of difficult. But yeah, if you like Trials, I think this game might have come out before Trials. I might be wrong, but it might come out around a similar time. But yeah, people love this game, so definitely give MotoHeroz a look. Survival Survivor, like with art style Penta Tentacles, it's another snake kind of game. Your character grows longer as you pick up these different like bug creatures, but there's also enemies you have to avoid. And this one's a pretty fun game, and I think this one's cheap as well. I found this game randomly browsing through the store, and I thought it was pretty decent. Moki is a very cheap feeling indie game on the WiiWare. It's a puzzle game where it's sort of like Hydro Adventure, but with more smaller single condensed puzzles. The first puzzle made me feel like I was supposed to tilt the Wii remote, but to my surprise this game doesn't even use motion controls, even though the levels look like they should. But then I was also surprised when the second and third level are completely different to the first level. You do still use the controller to move the environment rather than to move the little creatures that you're supposed to get into these little warp holes. And overall it's a pretty okay game. And these games kind of caught my eye. At first I thought they were kind of crappy, but upon playing them a bit more they could probably be pretty fun for parties. There's Gnomz and Too Fast for Gnomz. Both very different games. Gnomz is, at first it felt like a kind of Smash Bros game, but it ends up playing more like Joust, where the objective is to jump on your enemies to get points, and you have to see who can get the most points in a short amount of time. I imagine this game's a lot of fun multiplayer, and I hope to get to check it out with my friends one time. And Too Fast for Gnomz is an endless runner sort of game, not as fun as Tomena. And then, unlike those Taito games, there are some multi-platform games that are definitely multi-platform because they've got the exact same title as they have on the Xbox Live Arcade and PSN. So these games are probably not best on the Wii because the Wii is in a HD console, so they're most likely just going to be better on Xbox Live or PSN. So I'll put a list of some of the most notable ones on screen now. And then lastly I want to talk about a few Japanese exclusives. So I own a Japanese Wii, and I only got around to grabbing some of the Japanese exclusive WiiWare games a couple weeks ago before the WiiWare was shutting down. So there's technically 6 games that I'm going to talk about. First off is Line Attack Heroes, which is a fairly simple action game made by Grezzo. And you may know Grezzo for either Street Pass, I think it was Street Pass Garden they made, or probably more likely some of the Zelda 3DS games, the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask port, and they also helped work on Triforce Heroes. But this game is their own original game, only released in Japan. It's an action game where you have to attack your opponent and then you also pick up the little minions that get dropped off to add to your attack, because you can swing the Wii remote, spin around and do a big attack. I suppose that's where the game gets its name from, because you're making a line of heroes. But it's definitely one I'd recommend picking up before it's gone if you have a Japanese Wii. And then there's this really quirky game by Sega called Poe's Big Adventure. It's a parody of 2D NES platforming games, specifically Super Mario Bros. And it's a pretty funny one at that. Even if you don't get all the Japanese, there's still funny things with the items that you can pick up and the gameplay. They've done a really good job of making this a really weird, unique parody game that's actually pretty fun to play as well, mainly for the humour, more so than the gameplay, but I think the gameplay is what makes the humour, so it's definitely one to check out. And then there was a port of the Super Nintendo shooter game Phalanx for the Japanese WiiWare. You can probably just play the Super Nintendo version, and it's probably just as good as this one. I haven't actually played that version. But what I can tell from this game is that it's a decent shooter game, not as good as something like R-Type or Gradius, but a good shooting game nonetheless. And then lastly for Japanese games, there were 3 Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games released on the Japanese WiiWare. And this is the first time the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games have ever seen a release on a home console. They've always been on the DS or the 3DS, or also the Game Boy Advance, in the case of Red Rescue Team. And these games play exactly the same as the DS versions, but take the graphics of the Pokemon Rumble games. So the difference between the 3 versions is only the starter Pokemon. So there's a water version, an electric version, and a fire version. Not a grass version for some reason. It doesn't mean you're stuck to these types, it really only represents the colour. For example, in the blue version you can play as Riolu and Wynaut. Yeah, it kind of sucks that these games are going away, because a lot of people won't have a chance to play these games, especially here in the West where they didn't even release. So I'm not going to say you should probably go out and quickly import a Japanese Wii to get these games. But if you have a Japanese Wii lying around, definitely pick them up. And then I saved the very worst till last. I was really tricked when I picked up this game. This is the dumbest WiiWare game that I ever managed to play. It's Ubisoft's Rabbids Lab. So at first, when I saw the title of this game and I saw it on the store, I thought it was just going to be a minigame compilation like all the other Rabbids games. It's far, far worse than that. It's sort of a make-your-own Rabbid game, and then you can tilt the Wii remote to fling him around a spaceship. It's so ridiculous, and it kind of sums up the entirety of WiiWare. How it wasn't quite as robust as the Xbox Live Arcade or PlayStation Network at the time. And you ended up getting these weird shovelware games, some of which were disguised as actual games. But anyway, that's pretty much all of the WiiWare games I managed to pick up that I spoke about. And it's not going to be long till the WiiWare is gone completely. There's obviously other ways to get these games with unofficial and not so above board means. But if you want to pick them up legitimately, then you have to act fast. So let's pour one last drink out for the Wii Shop Channel. I hope this video helped you dig through the shovelware that was the WiiWare section, and hope you managed to pick up some great games before they're gone. Anyway, thanks guys for watching, and as always, have fun playing video games.